Okay, so get this, right? We're diving into this case where the killer, like, vanished, poof, gone, after every single crime. No fingerprints, no DNA. It's already giving me chills.
Mhm.
We're talking about this article called The Serial Killer Who Left No Evidence Behind, a true crime story. And it's fiction, but get this. It's based on real cases, so even creepier.
It really does show just how hard it is for investigators. Like, when the killer's so smart, they practically know forensics inside and out. It's like they're always a step ahead.
Yeah, and the article starts right off describing these super organized crimes. Like, victims are found out in the middle of nowhere, no signs of struggle, like no trace of the killer at all.
Yeah.
Sounds like one of those TV crime shows, but oh no, this is real life. So who could pull this off? I mean, does it take, like, special training or something?
Not necessarily formal training, no,
Hmm.
but you got to have a certain, I'd say, a high level of intelligence, and you got to be seriously meticulous. See, this meticulousness, it's like a trademark, like a calling card of what we call organized serial killers. It's not just, doing the crime, it's the planning, the control over every little thing. They're not just like, criminals, they're crafting like a masterpiece of deception.
Ooh. That's a chilling way to put it, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So how does this organized label actually help? Like the detectives, the investigators, is it like a checklist?
More of a framework. It helps them get inside the killer's head. Organized killers, they often choose victims, very specifically. They kind of rehearse the crimes in their mind, and they take these deliberate steps to hide the evidence. They might even have a kit, just for the crime with tools, and then they get rid of everything afterward very carefully. All about minimizing risk and being in control.
Whoa, that's disturbing, but also kind of fascinating. It's like they're playing this deadly game of chess, thinking, way ahead.
Exactly. And just like chess, every move counts. Which is why this thing called the golden hour principle, it's crucial. Those first 48 hours after a crime, those are critical for, getting evidence before it disappears, talking to witnesses before their memory gets fuzzy. If you miss those early leads, the whole case can fall apart, even with, all the technology we have today.
Okay, I've heard golden hour before, but what does that mean, really? What actually happens in those 2 days? And why does it matter so much, even with all our fancy tech stuff?
Okay, so imagine this. Every minute after a crime happens, it's like sand slipping through an hourglass, right?
Yeah.
In those first 48 hours, investigators, they're racing against time to lock down the crime scene, write down every detail, grab all the information they can, fingerprints, DNA, witness stories, security camera footage, you name it. All of that stuff can get messed up or disappear completely as time goes on.
So it's not just being fast, it's about catching all those little pieces of the puzzle before they're gone forever, right?
Exactly. And even with all the crazy advancements we have in forensics, time is still the enemy. DNA breaks down, memories get all jumbled, and witnesses, they can just vanish. And in a case like this one, where the killer, they're going out of their way to leave no trace, that initial time window it's even more crucial.
Which makes me wonder, how did they catch this guy at all? I
Yeah.
mean, if he was so good at covering his tracks, something must have happened, like a lucky break or something, right?
You're right. And this is where things get really interesting. Years went by, the case went ice cold, and then, out of nowhere, a witness steps forward. They had seen this kind of suspicious car, near one of the spots where someone's taken. Problem was, the description was really vague.
So not exactly a slam dunk then.
Nope, not at all. But those investigators, man, gotta give them credit. They dug through, tons of security footage, checking locations, timestamps. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. But eventually, they found a match.
Wow, that's dedication. So was this like the killer's car?
The car belonged to a man named John Doe, who, you guessed it, lived this totally normal life. No history of violence, just, some minor offenses. But when they questioned him, his alibi for the important dates, it was flimsy, to say the least. And then things got even more interesting.
Okay, you're killing me. Spill it. What happened next?
They got a warrant to search his house. And what they found, oh man, it was straight out of a horror film. Hidden in the floorboards, behind fake walls, they found pictures of the victims, maps of where the bodies were dumped, and the creepiest part, detailed journals in his handwriting, all about the crimes.
Journals. Like he actually wrote down what he did. That's beyond creepy. Why would anyone do that? I mean, especially a killer trying so hard not to get caught.
That's where the psychology gets really fascinating. This question has stumped experts forever. Why do some killers feel like they have to document their crimes? Control. Wanting to relive it, some messed up way to feel validated, or something else completely. What do you think?
Man, that's a tough one. I mean, it seems like a huge risk, right? Like leaving a trail straight to your door. But then again, maybe it's their way of like dealing with what they did, making sense of all that darkness. It's
Yeah.
like they're creating this twisted legacy, this monument to their crimes.
That's a really sharp observation, and it brings us to one of the most interesting parts of this whole case, John Doe's trial. Because you'd think with those journals it'd be an open and shut case, right? But it wasn't that simple. You'd think so, right? I mean, journals, photos, maps, it's all right there. But the defense, oh, they were clever. They actually argued, get this, that the journals, sure, they're creepy, but they don't actually connect Doe to the crimes specifically. Say anyone could have written that stuff. It's just fantasy, not a real confession.
Wait, seriously? They tried to say it was all made up? Come on, he had pictures of the victims, maps of where they were found. I mean, that sounds pretty incriminating to me.
Yeah, to most folks it would. But the defense, they knew what they were doing. They focused on the lack of that hard physical evidence. No DNA, no fingerprints actually putting Doe at the crime scenes. They said the whole case was based on circumstantial evidence, which, they claimed was shaky and not enough for a guilty verdict.
Okay, I think I see what they were doing. Throw some doubt on the evidence. Maybe hint that someone else was involved, and hope the jury just focuses on what's missing instead of what's staring them in the face.
But how much does circumstantial evidence actually, count in court?
That's a tricky one, and legal experts debate it all the time. Think of it like building a wall, brick by brick. Each brick on its own doesn't look like much, but put them all together, you get this strong structure. Circumstantial evidence, it's kind of like that. Each piece by itself might not be enough, but when you put them all together, they can tell a pretty convincing story.
So it's all about the big picture, not just the individual pieces. Exactly. The prosecution, they need to weave together a story, connect all the dots, show a clear pattern of behavior and motive. In Doe's case, they used those journals to show he planned this, it wasn't random. And those photos, maps, they backed up the details in the journals, making their case stronger.
And I bet experts had a lot to say too, right? Like maybe someone who could analyze those journals and say they're authentic, or a profiler who could link Doe's personality to the crimes.
You got it. Experts in forensic psychology, criminal profiling, they were essential. They looked at Doe's writings, his actions, the way the crimes happened, and built this profile that painted a very specific picture.
So it was like a battle of stories. The defense trying to create doubt, while the prosecution was using those journals, the expert opinions, to tell their version, their narrative.
That's a great way to think about it. And in the end, it was the jury's job to decide which story they believed.
And they convicted him.
They did. John Doe, guilty on all charges. Sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole. But even with a conviction in this case, it leaves us with some unsettling questions.
Like what? You mean besides the big one? Like, why would someone do this?
Right, beyond the motive. Remember those journals, the meticulous planning, the way he tried to erase himself? It makes you wonder, what if there are other John Does out there, just as smart, just as careful, hiding in plain sight?
That's a truly scary thought. Someone who can do these horrible things but still seem normal, blend right in. It's like a horror movie come to life.
It reminds us you can't judge a book by its cover. Evil can wear a mask of normalcy. And it shows how important it is to stay alert, to trust your gut feeling when something feels wrong.
Speaking of gut feelings, what about those investigators? What made them focus on that one witness report, especially when it was so vague? Was it just a hunch or something more?
It was probably a mix of things. Remember what we talked about with organized killers? They need control, they plan everything perfectly, but that also means they can be tripped up by stuff they don't expect, things they can't plan for.
So like a random witness, a quick glimpse of a car, that could be the weak spot in their perfect plan.
Exactly. And experienced investigators, they get that. They know even the most careful criminal can slip up. There's always a chance, even a tiny one. They miss something. And here, it seems like that's what happened. That one little witness report, it became the thread that unraveled Doe's whole charade.
Wow, it's amazing how something so small can make such a big difference, like that butterfly effect. One tiny change leads to something totally unexpected.
Great analogy. And it really highlights why you should never ignore anything, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. In investigations, even the tiniest detail can be the key to cracking a case wide open.
It's like a reminder. We should all pay more attention, be more aware of what's going on around us. We never know. We might see or hear something that could help solve a crime, or even prevent something bad from happening.
Absolutely. We all have a part to play in keeping our community safe, but it's not just about observing, it's about understanding how criminals think, recognizing the warning signs, and knowing when to trust your gut.
So it's about being informed, being involved, and taking action. But let's face it, most of us aren't, trained detectives. What should regular people be looking out for? What are those red flags that might mean something's not right?
That's a really good question, and it's something we should all think about, especially after this case. One thing to remember, these organized offenders, they're often really good at blending in. They can be charming, charismatic, and seem totally normal.
So how do you spot them? What are the signs that someone might be hiding a dark side?
Well, there are a few things to watch out for. Now, it's important not to jump to conclusions, but if you see consistent patterns of manipulative behavior, a lack of empathy, and an obsession with control, those could be potential red flags. Also, pay attention to inconsistencies in their stories, sudden changes in their behavior, and any attempts to isolate or control others.
That's really helpful advice. It's about paying attention to our surroundings, trusting our gut, and realizing that even the most ordinary seeming people can have dark secrets. It's a scary thought, but an important one to remember.
You're absolutely right, but it's not all doom and gloom, you know? This case also shows just how dedicated and smart law enforcement can be. Think about it. They were dealing with a killer who vanished into thin air on purpose. But through careful investigation, analysis, and yeah, a bit of luck, they figured out his game and brought him to justice.
It really shows the power of human determination and how investigative techniques are always evolving. And it gives me hope that even when we're facing such calculated evil, there are people out there working hard to protect us, make sure justice wins.
That's a powerful message to end on. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier. Those journals. We talked about the legal stuff, the psychological theories, but I'm curious, what do you think John Doe was trying to accomplish by writing all that down?
Honestly, that question has been bugging me this whole deep dive. I don't have a clear answer, but I think in his own twisted way, he was trying to become immortal. Not in the usual way, but by leaving a record of what he did, a testament to his darkness. He wanted to be remembered, even if it was for all the wrong reasons.
That's really insightful and kind of chilling. It speaks to how complex the human mind is, what drives us even in the darkest parts of our existence.
Yeah, it's like he wanted to create this, horrifying work of art, something that would shock and scare people forever.
And in a way, he did. I mean, this case, even though it's fictionalized in the article, it still gets to us, still messes with our heads. It forces us to look at the darkest parts of humanity and ask questions that have no easy answers.
It definitely stays with you, that's for sure. But it also reminds us how important it is to be careful, to be aware, and to understand. The more we learn about how these people think, the better we can spot the warning signs and protect ourselves and the people we care about.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? Especially when you're dealing with something like this. In this case, it's a stark reminder that evil can be anywhere, hiding right under our noses, disguised as something totally normal.
That's a sobering thought, but it's also a call to action.
Mhm.
We can't just sit around thinking this stuff only happens in stories. We have to be aware, informed, and ready to take action to protect ourselves in our communities.
Couldn't agree more. We all have a part to play in making the world a safer place, whether it's reporting something suspicious, supporting law enforcement, or just being more aware of what's happening around us. Every little bit helps.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the case of John Doe, I'm feeling, well, a mix of things. A little uneasy knowing that there are people out there who can do such terrible things, but also a sense of, I don't know, empowerment, knowing there are people out there working hard to fight against these threats.
It's a constant battle, a back and forth between the people who want to hurt others and those who want to protect them. But like we saw in this case, even the most careful criminals make mistakes. And justice, it usually finds a way in the end.
And to all our listeners out there, remember this. You're not helpless. You have a voice, you can make choices, and you can make a difference. By staying informed, being aware, and trusting your gut, you can help create a safer world for yourself and everyone around you.
Well said. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the chilling world of John Doe. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, even in the darkest corners of the human experience, there's always hope.
And remember, the truth is often right there in front of us, just waiting to be discovered.